Previously on agentpalmer.com, Ready Player 2 is just as good as Ready Player 1. Storytelling is an undead art with the Edge of the World broadcast, and Lauren's story resonated with people across many swaths of life. Trust me, they told me so. This is the Palmer Files, episode 40, with Joel Mengel, creator of the Edge of the World broadcast, a zombie apocalypse podcast that he wrote, created, edited, and produced. We discuss all of those processes, plus inspirations, working with kids, being proud, not wasting time, and much, much more. Are you ready? Let's do the show! Hello and welcome to the Palmer Files. I'm your host, Jason Stershik, also known as Agent Palmer, and on this 40th episode is Joel Mengel, creator of the Edge of the World broadcast. Joel and I will soon get into the conversation where we discuss the inspirations and origins of the Edge of the World broadcast. But first, in the event you haven't heard the show, here's the Season 1 trailer for you.
If you can hear this, my name is Delsin Moore. It's been over 3 years since the event and the Great Panic. 3 years since they appeared. I have no idea how this number station is still broadcasting or why, and I don't know how many more of us are left. What I do know is this world is no longer ours, and we are an endangered species. There are secrets here that I've only just begun to unravel, and I think it might just change everything. Now, if you can hear this, stay safe. The future depends on it.
So, if you've heard the show, you know what it's all about, and you're probably as excited for Season 2 as I am. But if you haven't, that is a taste of what's in store should you be intrigued after the conversation you are about to hear, which contains no spoilers. What it does contain is discussions about creating the project you want to consume, the art of storytelling, knowing how something ends, how we consume media, philosophy, self-teaching, a little mutual admiration, and much, much more. Before we get going, remember that if you want to discuss the episode as you listen or afterwards, you can tweet me at Agent Palmer, my guest, Joel Mengel, at FuelNeve on Twitter, that's FuelNeve, his show at Edge Worldcast, and this show at the Palmer Files. You can find the Edge of the World broadcast as well as Joel's other show, the Curly Mustache podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget, you can see all of my writings and rantings on agentpalmer.com, and of course, email can be sent to thepalmerfiles@gmail.com. So without further ado, let's attempt to stay safe. Joel, quick question, real quick. How different is Delsin Moore from Joel? Like, are you the same?
Kind of. Yeah, pretty much it's the same. I took the Larry Correia write yourself as the hero school of thought when it came to writing that particular character, which if you don't know who Larry Correia he does a fantastic book series called Monster Hunter International and the Grimoire Chronicles. And all his main characters are basically just kind of hyper awesomized versions of himself, which I kind of was like, yeah, I would. This is how I would act.
Well, you write what you know. I mean, that's the basis for everybody when we start anything, right? Like that's just the start.
Yeah, well, according to my therapist, I really don't know myself well, but I'm kind of figuring it out as I write this character. In a sense, it's very strange.
So I want to talk about the show, but more important than that, I want to ask you about this show is slightly satirical at times, but you started the Twitter account for this show in 2018, right? Before the pandemic and before people stormed the Capitol. And in your show, you have a pandemic and people storming the Capitol. So I want to ask, like, how has current events informed the show that you put out for season 1?
Honestly, I actually wrote the first episode in 5 minutes in 2018. It took me 5 minutes. I literally, and this is going to sound strange, but I was watching an episode of The Walking Dead. It was the scene where Rick Grimes dies, quote unquote.
Yeah.
But I heard the music, and it was one of those things where I just heard the music and my brain just went, that music informed the concept of the first episode. And by the end of 2019, I had a basic outline of the story. Like I had the full season 1 mapped out. So honestly, nothing about the pandemic or 2020 really influenced the story.
So I'm afraid for you to write season 2 now, right? Like, because if it gets worse, I am so scared for us.
I would be too with where the story's going.
Now,
but to be completely honest, though, the original season 2 would have been infinitely worse. The original outline for season 2, because it went into like, I don't mind telling people this one, but the original outline for season 2 had a very spiritual, supernatural demon aspect to it.
Okay.
And so it's like, oh, thank God I got rid of that outline. Shit.
Well, and how do you think people like do people see? And me, like I did a little. I listened to the whole show, right? And I listened to it in 2 ways, and we'll get to that in a second. But I went like I remember you, I think, pitching something like back, like I don't know, like a rough draft somewhere back then that I listened to. So I was like, this has been around forever. Like, I don't remember if it was pre-pandemic or not. And like in the moment when I didn't put all that together, I was like, well, this is obvious. This is clearly Joel's, manifestations of what's going on now. So way to be on the pulse. Like, cause somehow
it was way ahead in the sense that like, I had an outline for another show that I wanted to do.
Okay.
But I can't ever seem to get my brother to commit to anything. So I was still kicking around an idea, and then I heard that music, and earlier in the day I'd watched a documentary on, the Black Plague, and I was like, that's the most fucking frightening thing I've ever seen in my entire life. And then that music and the scenes, and it all just sort of, my brain just went, well, how about this idea? And instead of, and then I had to think like, cause I had to work in the constraints that I had, which is I don't have anyone else I can really depend on to kind of co-host or be a regular.
Yeah.
At the time I didn't. So I was like, how would I tell this story? And then there's another show a podcast that I absolutely love. And if you haven't listened to it, and your listeners absolutely should. It's called King Falls AM.
Okay.
And that kind of set up the concept of a broadcast.
Okay.
Instead of telling it from, I guess, like a
narrative.
Yeah. I wanted to give it a unique narrative approach that I could work with what I have. What I'm capable of being able to get to immediately.
And this is written wholly by you. And that's a process I understand. Like, I understand sitting down and writing. I've done 2 solo episodes to this podcast, and I have a couple more planned, and I push them off as much as possible. Joel, you were the voice in some of these episodes. Do you not go crazy? Like, just trying to get the lines out properly and then directing yourself and then having an hour of you to listen to going like, oh, why couldn't I do it this way?
This is going to sound incredibly vain on my part, but not for season 1.
Okay.
Because 2019, it was all just me trying to, I had the first story. All right. I knew where it was going. And I know where the story will end. I know exactly how the story is going to end. But for almost all of 2019, I am going through all different music in my head until like my MP3 player is just playing instrumental of different styles. And like once it hits in my head, I'll replay the episode before I even write it down in my brain. So I know exactly how I kind of want to hit it vocally to kind of match the emotion that song, which I can't use, but I want to evoke that emotion in what I say with the music, that how it evoked it in me. And
is it easy to get, I have a hard time with the solo episodes, right? Like I do an intro for this show and an outro, and it's at most 7 minutes. And I have a hard time because it's me. I can edit this conversation we're having right now, no problem. But just me, and I'm at a loss. And you're doing it dramatically, so you're probably do you give yourself multiple takes? Like, what's it like being your own director?
You know what? Honestly, I think it goes back to what I said earlier. I've had so much time to work on season 1 that I honestly think I'm going to have that problem in season 2. Because I'm under such a time crunch now to meet a deadline that I set for myself, that I'm going to have the problem you're talking about. But I've worked, I've been kind of gestating it for so long that I know, like I'll give myself 2 or 3 if I don't feel like I hit it right.
Okay.
But most of the time I kind of, again, this sounds vain, but I kind of do I've kind of done the Alanis Morissette trick, which is I kind of one take it.
Nice. Well, hey, why not? Like, if I can, I do. Like, if I mess up, depending on where I mess up, I'll just do the whole thing over. Like, yeah, it's 4 minutes that I have to do over or whatever, but, like, it just flows better, right? Because that's, you want Delsin to be as authentic as possible.
Yeah.
So, and look, I have to applaud your writing. Like, because the pop culture, like the little references, and I feel like you're writing to me, right? Like the fact that you mentioned that Gwar played music at a lower volume than this, like just viscerally, I was like, that's for me. Like I get that joke. Like I'm the guy who has 4 Gwar VHSs in my basement.
No kidding.
Like
that's awesome.
Like it's just and by the way, my brain goes in other places too. Like he throws the coffee mug after finding all the coffee, and for a moment, you had the great sound effect of it shattering, and for a moment, my head went, "Oh my God, is this like the glasses in the Twilight Zone?" Like there was time. I was like, he found all this coffee, and now there's no mug. Like what? Like there was.
I wish I had thought of that. I'm not gonna lie. I wish I had thought of that. But the more I got to thinking about it, I kind of go back to your first question. There's a lot of my dad in the character as well.
Okay.
There are little phrases, little phrases, and way certain things are said that I definitely lifted that from my father, because he also inspired me long time ago, right before he passed away. Like he just told me, like, don't fucking waste your time. That's like one of his last words to me, was just don't waste your fucking time. So I like to include little phrases of him just kind of like, hey, Pops, I'm doing it. Shit.
How many ideas like this did you have beforehand that you never, like, was that the impetus? Was that like, okay, well, now I have to? Like, have you been toying with little creative endeavors for forever, I guess?
I have toyed with YouTube channels. I still think the movie review shows are still on YouTube, I think, which is just embarrassing to watch fat Joel in front of a screen talking smack about, like, The Happening, I think it was. But, just little things like that. But I've always wanted to do, because going back to when I was a little kid, I think maybe 8 or 9, Sunday nights after church, 9 p.m., NPR radio, underneath my blanket, Chicago, Illinois radio station, is old time radio classics from when, for 2 hours.
Wow.
So I would listen to, like The Shadow, The Green Hornets, the guy, what's the name of the character from the Maltese Falcon?
Oh,
Sam. No,
I'm not going to get it either. That's fine.
Those old detectives. But that's what really set up my love for it, and really that's always been where I've kind of wanted to take it.
See, and what's funny is I come from the next generation where I would listen to like Prarie Home Companion, which is spoofing that original stuff. Well, not all the time, but it's spoofing that stuff, right? Like it's especially when they did their bits.
Where the women are strong, where the women are strong, and all the men are good looking.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, it's. I mean, that's where I got my. Before, like I listened to that before AM radio. Like that was how I knew NPR. I thought that was all NPR was growing up, because that's all my parents would listen to as far as NPR when I was around, right? So like that was the thing. It's how I still know who Leo Kottke is. Like my music tastes are fucking all over the place, but that's how I know, right? It's and on long car rides, we would take the cassettes when that was still a thing, right? You'd have the Prarie Home Companion on cassette. Like it was when I didn't talk about this as much when I did the solo episode about my trip to Israel. When I created that, part of my pitch in college for that original thing was I'm going to do a Prarie Home Companion, but like more modern, right? Like, I mean, at the time, this is like early aughts. He's still doing it. So like, I don't know why I was like, man, I'm going to do it better. Like, or, a cocky college kid. Right. But like, I grew up with that stuff. Like that's ingrained in me. And I think I think some of that stuff, when it hits you at the right time, like it never leaves you.
No. Prarie Home Companion was a big thing with, again, me and my dad. That was kind of our big thing, because it was like Sunday afternoon, /evening, Prarie Home Companion would come on. So we'd listen for about an hour and a half, and then the family, mom and dad would drive to church, and we'd have to sit through that, and then come home, and then it was the old time. But yeah, Prarie Home Companion was one of those defining kind of, I could do this with a story, because I got so wrapped up with the drama, and then I would hear them do it, Prarie Home Companion do the comedy aspect. I was like, oh shit, I could do anything with this.
It's one of those, I know it was an institution on NPR, but like I've never heard anybody get the variety aspect of it down in podcast form.
No, okay. Let's put aside Garrison Keillor's wildly inappropriate behavior, but he really did manage to capture something from a bygone era and just successfully bring it in. That it's to be honest, I got 9 episodes in season 1. There was originally 12 where I really did try and include a lot of the comedy, and there is one episode that will never see the light of day where it is kind of a musical.
Okay.
Where I have friends of mine who are doing a version of that show, singing the music and doing the dumb jokes that just are perfect,
and it will
never be released.
It's the over the top sound effects too. Like it's not subtle. It's like where somebody walks in the room, like we're hitting blocks because we want it to be like the like, I don't know, hardest hallway floor and the tallest heels, and she walked into the room. Like
click clock. Yeah.
But oh man. Oh, well, I mean, that's a good part of it. What about the writing, right? Because obviously that's an inspiration for doing this and choosing this medium. But where's the writing come from? Were you always a writer?
Yes and no. When I was younger, I would write, like I would take Dracula like the old Bram Stoker Dracula,
Yeah.
and then I would literally rewrite it page for page as a kid. And then around the third page, I would just start coming up with new stuff. So, it originally starts in like chapter 23 where Dracula is stalking Mina, whatever, right? And then around the third page, I just started putting my own ideas where Mina was a mutant and she was friends with Charles Xavier. And
Okay.
it just kind of went from there. I always liked taking something known and then kind of turning it and giving it my own little touch to it. Because everyone knows The Walking Dead. Everyone knows the post-apocalyptic landscape. It's a well-tread medium in storytelling. I just kind of was like, I wanted to take all my favorite aspects and then put it in there and then really add me, for lack of a better term, into the story and create something that I would want to listen to.
Well, yeah, that's why I do this show. Like you create the show you want to hear, right? Like that's what you do. But we've covered the writing, we've covered some of the acting. Did you always have sound engineer chops like that? Your show is mixed like almost professionally. Like it
is a pure gamble. It is amazing what you can learn on YouTube. I spent like 4 months just because all I have access to is free programs.
Sure.
So I literally went through there and I was just typing in how to edit music in Audacity. And then I would just watch it and take notes and then just experiment.
So, but do you have a technical prowess from beforehand?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
I have no training, no real experience with audio editing other than my old past podcasts where I would just, edit out the ums and the big breaks between speaking. That's it. That's the extent of my training. It was that's a good 3 to 4 months where I am just watching YouTube videos and taking notes and then practicing whenever the kids fell asleep.
Well, I mean, I'm kind of jealous because like I have such, I try my best to make this sound as professional as possible. I'm aiming for people to think that I'm not a one-man operation using your free Audacity software. Like,
I'm not going to lie. I genuinely thought when I started listening to you a while back, I genuinely thought, man, this guy, whoever's doing it has got the level, because I was just learning the terms. So I was wow, the levels on it are great. And, that echo is in the background's reduced and the sound is just clear. And wow, whoever the hell, I need to ask him who he hired and if it's affordable.
Yeah, no, this is where, I mean, we talk about like our life experiences that have led us here. Like all of my experience before this podcast led me to everything I know, right? Like Bill Sweeney, I love him, but the Wicked Theory podcast always had a volume problem. It was like, bar none, for like, I don't know, 75 of the 200 episodes he released, always had a tweet that's like somebody saying, it's Bill, it's too low. It's too low, Bill, right? So the first thing I did on my first episode was I swear this is exactly what I did. I exported it and I put it into Google Chrome because we all know Google Chrome works as a media player of all kinds. I was like, I don't want anything with volume control, like complicated. I just put it in there. And then I downloaded whatever the most recent Mark Maron was. And I went, if I can make sure my levels sound to his, it will be loud enough. Because he's a professional, he's already doing it. And I have then, and since then, like I think I can visually figure it out, but I was like, I'm not going to have the problem that Bill has. Like I'm just not going to do it. I want everybody to hear me loud and clear. And it's not a knock on Bill, but it's just like I learned that from obviously that experience. And the rest of it's just I don't know, dumb luck. Like I figured out processes for like how to make it sound a little bit better and how to make sure there's no echo, or, I have, I have saved EQ, manual custom EQ things that I made for if a Skype call sounds like a Skype call, this is my de-Skype call filter, right? Just little things I've done over time. And luckily I don't really need them all the time. But, I'm trying to be proud of this. And it's the same thing with your show. We're trying to do something that we want to listen to, and we want to listen to professional things. We don't want to listen to we do probably listen to amateur things, but given the choice, you'd rather, listen to somebody who knows what they're doing. And you just try and put that out there. So,
for me also, it was a lot of spite. Because there are two podcasts that I will listen to religiously without question, two of the audio drama area, and that is King Falls AM and the Magnus Archives.
Okay.
And both of them are just, the sound on them is so amazing. And I kept, they do live shows where they talk about how they came about making it. And it made me so mad that these guys who had no experience in really doing it were able to put together these shows that were so amazing. And I'm sitting on my ass going oh, well, you guys go fuck yourself. I'll show you how I can do it too. Part of it was, just me, I'm going to learn how to do it. And part of it was also just pure fucking spite.
Well, but all right. So real quick, back to Delsin Moore. You do make a comment that 4 years of IT and communications classes have finally paid off. I think that's in the first episode or second episode.
Yeah.
Did you go to school for communication and IT?
No.
So that's not autobiographical.
No. That one was, I knew where I was going to go with the story, and I needed to have something that the character that would be able to explain because it always bugged me in stories where the hero or the main character it just happened to come together. It's all just, fate. Let him figure out how to do this seemingly impossible thing. And I wanted originally I went for radiology technician.
Okay.
But no, that one part wasn't autobiographical. That was in service to the story because I knew where it was going to go, and I needed to have him talking about, his military and those particular backgrounds because I needed that to serve the story. That's where that came from.
So let's talk about the story, because I listened to 8 episodes as they released, and episodically, right? As they came out. So there's space in between each episode. And then I didn't listen to the last episode because I was I'm going to binge this in one sitting, and then I'll listen to the final one. I will tell you, there are things you pick up on when you listen to it back to back to back to back. And I have to ask, did you think about the 2 different ways people will consume it? Because obviously there are those people that will listen to it when it comes out. But then there's people, if somebody listens to this show right here and goes, well, I'll listen to that. And then they go back, they're all available. So they can listen to it all in one sitting. Did you, I don't know, have any, this is how I want to split things up, or this is the story, and if you listen to it, that's fine? Yes and no.
I'm not going to lie. I originally went into it going, I'm going to have it be when I was a kid. It's going to be once a week, and, that's all they're going to get, and that's how they're going to listen. And at the end of episode 9, I credit my brother as script supervisor because he brought it to my attention. He's just, around the second episode, he's just make sure that with each episode, you don't retread the same thing more than 45 seconds.
Yeah.
You want to have just enough, at the beginning of any, when you're binge watching something on Netflix, as that 45 seconds of previously on.
Yeah.
And that really made me have to rechange a lot of the elements and how I told the story for season 1 and what I'm going to have to do for season 2. But honestly, when I went into it, I just was thinking about how I do it, and I listen week by week by week.
Okay.
And then, like you said, every week there's a new listener. There's someone new who's never heard it, so I need to be able to connect them smoothly. But I didn't think of that first time when I originally started.
But obviously you're thinking about that going forward for season 2.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll tell you this, it doesn't change. The story doesn't change, right? Like but you pick up on little details that you get that you like I know you're, and given the global pandemic, like I know your release schedule was a little erratic, but even if it was on a weekly or bi-weekly schedule, there are things you lose, like little details that will just not stay with you throughout a week or 2 weeks. It's and that's the nature of television when we grew up too. Like you just don't remember everything. So there's like, if anybody's listening to this that only listened to it episodically, go back and listen to it. Although I hesitated at episode 7 and 8 because I was like, these are the only 2 where he said listener discretion is advised. And the moment you said that, I was like, I remember these. These are the ones I did not forget any piece of at all.
Episode 7, I have to give my oldest son, Eli, he blew me away.
Well, good, because hold on. Before we get there, I want to ask, like, what is it like? I mean, obviously, they're your kids, but, like, it's if you and I, like, even if I'm not in the same room, like, if you have a part for me, we can sit on Skype and you can direct me, right? Like, I've talked into a mic before, but working with kids, just in general, not the same, right? On any level. So, what was it like? Like, not even what the performance ended up being, but just what was it like getting them to record?
You know what? I have 2 of the, like, my children are the most polite hellions you'll ever meet. And it's great in the sense that I have 2 great kids who, when they see I'm excited about something, they immediately want to be a part of it. If I'm excited about a movie, they're like, can we watch it? They want to watch. They want to see the movies beforehand, even if they don't understand. Eli and Liam, it was a little difficult because getting them to just talk normal at first, because they loved watching the levels go way crazy.
Sure. So I want to make it go crazy. I want to make it go even more crazy.
Yeah. But honestly, this is going to sound terrible, but it was rough at first. But then when I promised them I'd pay them, like legitimately, I told the oldest, I was like, I will give you $1 if you just kind of calm and give me 30 minutes. One SpongeBob episode, I'll give you $1 and I'll order pizza tonight. And the youngest one, Liam, he just sat on the bed. He wanted that $1. He wanted that pizza.
I mean, just like a true actor. Like, why? You know, sometimes I'm in it for the craft, and sometimes I'm in it for craft services.
Yeah, like there's a lot more to that episode. I had at least a good 15 minutes worth of stuff, but I realized that I couldn't get them to do it all.
Well, the editing on that episode is superb because, like, listening back, the second time I know what it is, so I'm trying to focus on other things, and just knowing that, and did you have it in your head that it would be like jump skips, because it works out in your favor, because no matter what they give you, they only need to give you enough before it skips forward again.
Yeah, I wrote it with the idea of the jump skips in there because I wanted to kind of put that with Delsin starting to, spoiler alert, lose his shit.
Yeah.
You know? And yeah, I wanted to work that in there because I remember an old TV show. I think it was, you know what? It's an old TV show called Mantis.
Okay.
From back in the 90s, about a paraplegic black superhero. Carl Lumbly was the actor's name, who made a biomechanical suit that made him walk again and turned him into a superhero. But there was one episode that literally, when I was maybe 12 or 13, brought me to tears, because they would have the guys like doing a weird kind of interview and then cut they'd make that noise and then show what was happening.
Okay.
And when I was a kid, nowadays I'll rewatch it, like, that is the most cheesy shit I've ever seen. But as a kid, that affected me. I was like, and I always wanted to do something like that. And I wanted to do something that was my equivalent to the opening sequence from The Last of Us.
Okay.
The video game.
Yeah. All right.
If you haven't, have you seen that? Have you played that game?
I haven't played it, but I've watched a few people on Twitch because it's not the kind of game I'll play. But if enough people are talking about it, I kind of like, not necessarily hive mind, but I kind of want to know what's going on. So I watched a few people play it, so I have a general idea.
Yeah, the opening sequence was where I got the idea of the boys.
Okay.
How I wanted to include my boys and what kind of emotion I wanted to evoke. Because literally, that is the most amazing 15 minutes. And the last 3 minutes of it are, you will stop. Your jaw will hit the floor because it is better than, I'd say, 90% of the movies that come out in Hollywood in the past 5 to 10 years.
Now, did you always want to involve your kids? But at the very beginning, like before it's really scripted in your head, like when you're like, I know what my next project's going to be. Do you want to involve them?
Yes.
Okay.
I absolutely did. I didn't know how I was going to do it.
Okay. Yeah.
But I was like, I have to include them in one way or another because again, going back to my dad, one of my old podcasts, I got to sit down with him and a buddy of his. So there's like, I think it's on my computer somewhere. There's like 3 hours of my dad just telling stories. Like the time a staff sergeant told him to go pick up a injured soldier in Nevada in Death Valley when they were doing their basic, he called it the world's most expensive game of laser tag.
Okay.
And sent him into a live firing range.
Wow.
But I wanted something of that equivalent for me and them. So years, when I'm gone, they have this cool, raw kind of story that they're going to have forever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Kept in a medium for them. It's 3 parts that made me want to make that particular episode with them.
Okay. All right. So we're done. You're done with season 1. And I don't want to talk about season 2 yet. I want to talk about, how do you feel about season 1, right? Because you've had a chance to release the episodes and see people like me react to certain things and generally people react. What has that been like as far as you made this thing, you loved it for, 2 years, and then, okay, internet, here you go. Like, what was that like?
Oh, equal parts terrifying and one of the most satisfying things I've ever done on a personal level.
Okay.
But also re-listening to it now, I can't re-listen to it because I hear all the mistakes I made with the audio and the story. And, I should have said it like this. Maybe that might have connected better to the next episode. But, it's just little nitpicking things. But honestly, I'm still terrified to promote it because, people are going to listen. But I've never been more proud about a personal project than I have with this. Like, because people in like Israel DMing me and just saying, this is a great, one guy is working on the border between Israel and Palestine. And he says he listens to it on his iPhone. And it's like, I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Are you shitting me? You are seconds away from death.
Yeah.
And you're listening to my shit? This is the coolest thing ever.
Well, I like the show, but like, I gotta tell you, man, like it's not, you're bringing me back to a genre I haven't really been a part of. Like, as far as like horror / thriller, even mystery's different, but like, as far as like the horror thriller aspects of it, like, with the exception of whatever we do on Halloween, I haven't watched those movies on a regular basis since I was like 17. And that's a number that I'm now just old enough to say was decades ago, right? Like, but I'm coming back to this and I'm going like, well, when it's done right, this is why it's done right. Like, this is why people enjoy it, because it's more than just here's your jump scare, right? And you accomplish like getting me to that place where it's like, I do and I don't want to know what happens next. Like I did, yeah. Do I hit play now? Do I don't. Maybe not. I'm not in the right headspace. I'll listen to it tomorrow, right? Like.
Yeah, because I wanted to take like what you had said. I kind of wanted to make something that a story that I liked, but I also, and this is sound weird, but I wanted a story to kind of like pass the idea past my grandparents and have them say that's a cool story.
Nice.
Because if I could get my grandparents on board with, because they make Billy Graham look like a groupie. It's like, I love him. I'm not talking any trash. It's just, it takes a lot to get like my grandpa Bob interested in something like this.
Okay. Yeah.
So it was, part of it was me just kind of like getting them in. I knew if I could get them in, I could get people like you in who would find it.
So it's more, it's almost like a personal like challenge. Like, how can I do this on such a level? And look, that I have trouble getting my mother to listen to this show, and she's my mom, right? Like that's supposed to be the given. So I feel like, all right, well, I got to up the ante. I got to make it interesting for my mom. Right. And so you have this level where it's like, but it's more, right? Cause we talked about it like not too long ago. Like, we want to do a show we also want to listen to too. So now you've got multiple fronts with which you're like, all right, now it's kind of coalescing of what I need to do. Now it's time to come up with the meat of it.
Mm-hmm.
What is the writing process like? Are you literally sitting down and writing?
The writing process usually starts with, I have the idea. I was like, okay, I had on my wall like a big, like I taped together about 12 sheets of paper that I had drawn graphs on.
Okay.
And literally it looked like Charlie Day from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia because it had red string going to each of them.
I got you.
And I had the outline, like each episode had a very specific point I wanted to make. So once I had season 1 and the full crazy conspiracy wall art done, then I'd literally like, right before the shutdown, the big shutdown, we were dead at work. So I would literally sit down and look at a picture on my phone of episode 1 and start there.
Okay.
And then, because I knew where I wanted to go season 1, beginning to end. And I had the basic roadmap for each episode. And that's how I would start. And that's how I would write along.
I need to tell you, I find it refreshing that you wanted to do this as audio, because occasionally I run into people that are like, "Oh yeah, I'm starting my podcast so I can make a TV show," or like this is my launch pad. I'm gonna get people to this is my great idea, and then Netflix is gonna come and bang down my door, and I find that then just write a television script. Don't fuck around with my medium. And it's not my medium, right? Like, it's one, like I write too, like I have multiple mediums, but like there's something, and maybe it's because of the love of like the old radio stuff. Like I find radio sacred, and if you can do it right, it doesn't need to be video, right? Like, it's just one of the most authentic forms of storytelling that exist.
Yeah, and I never wrote this with the concept of ever achieving any kind of notoriety. I don't want any notoriety, and I never thought, it's never even occurred to me the concept of like moving it from just audio, the audio medium, to like television or streaming or anything like that. It was literally all I ever wrote it was just for that. just for that kind of anticipation I always get when it's like, it's fucking Tuesday, it's the new Magnus Archives. I'm getting fucking excited. I know 2:00's coming around. Let's fucking hurry up. That's what I was wanting it for.
Do you personally, because I will answer the question first, but like, do you find the idea of like success on a massive scale scary? Because like I do, like I look at my numbers because I personally, I want to make sure I'm doing better. And the only way that we can really know that is like, did I get a few more listens this month than I did last month? Because clearly that just means I'm gaining someone, right? Like slowly but surely I'm gaining people. And that's cool. I don't want 1 million people to listen to me tomorrow. That would scare the shit out of me. And I don't know what my disinterest in, maybe it's not even disinterest, but I don't know what I'm scared of, but like I am scared for this to like maybe go viral one day. And then all of a sudden like, oh my God, this is amazing. But like to have 1 or 2 people say it, great. To have 100,000 people say it, what?
No, the concept positively scares the ever-loving shit out of me.
Well, we can start our own little support group.
Just because I know, because every time someone's like, you're going to be famous with this, all I can think of is that Tom Waits song where he says, I fear from the sins of my youth.
Yeah.
And I just know I have done so much shady shit when I was a younger man that it's like, I could never be famous. No.
Well, I mean,
frightens me to no end.
But you
just
know what?
The concept of fame. Because then
we were before cell phones, man. So some of that stuff is just he said, she said. Like we don't have video evidence of all the shit we did when we were kids.
But I just know that's part of my fear. And like I'd say good 50-50. 50-50. Oh, I don't want to be famous because I did some dumb shit. And the other 50 is I don't want to get scared and screw it up. You know? Okay. I want to maintain the headspace I have writing this to get, to make it stay the same but different. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah.
Like I want to evolve it, but I want to maintain where my brain is and what's helped me get to season 1 that I'm proud of, and transfer that into season 2. And I think fame or being viral or, being well known or recognized on a big scale would change that inevitably, because now you have a whole bunch of more people that you want to make happy.
Yeah. And it's when you internalize it to just keeping it, well, that's the balance. That's the hard part, right? Like, can we grow our base, whatever that means, like listeners, get more listeners and still maintain I'm doing this for me because this is the show I want to listen to. And it takes a kind of fortitude to maintain that. And as long as we don't have hundreds of thousands of downloads on release day, we don't have to worry about that. We're still just doing it for us.
Yeah, I'm going to have to do, when I start really ramping up production for season 2, I'm going to have to do what I did with season 1, which is not look at the analytics. For all of season 1, I did not look till the end. I didn't look how many people were downloading. I didn't, because, but for season 2, all of season 2, I'm just going to have to not look again. Not look at what iTunes ratings or comments or anything like that. That's off the table for me.
I look monthly now. I monthly, like once a month, beginning of the month, I look at the last month for the podcast and the blog. I just go, did I do a little bit better this month than last month? Yes, fantastic. Or no, well, can't. Like I don't know why I'm looking either. Like, because if my numbers drop at the next month I look, I'm not changing anything. I'm still doing this show for me, and I'm still writing my blog for me. Like I don't know why I look at all, but I can't not. But I've limited it to 12 times a year, so I feel like small victories, because we all know that first show. How many did I get today? Ooh, somebody downloaded me today.
Okay, I will admit, first show I did check quite a few times. I wanted to sound cooler than I actually was, but no, that first show. But then I was like, I can't, because I'm very much like, I want to appeal to as many people as I can. But for example, around episode 2, I had to redo that twice. I rewrote it twice, and there's like an alternate version of that episode that I have on my computer, but it felt so vastly out there different than season 1 because, I kept looking at the numbers and kept looking at the downloads, and I was like, wow, I got this many people. Okay, so if I put it this way, and I'm conscious enough of myself to know I'd be really easily swayed to change what I wanted to kind of appeal to as many people as possible.
Is there anything in your process that you learned from season 1 that you're going to take and tweak for season 2? Like, holy crap. I mean, and obviously what you learned as far as, editing and producing, like that's learned knowledge you're going to take forward. But like, as far as like the writing, are you going to do another Charlie Day on your wall? Like,
I actually, yeah, I am going to do another Charlie Day on my wall. But what I've learned from season 1 is how to, and I want to take it in there. By the end of season 1, episode 9, there's a lot of threads that we kind of tied up and then, kind of frayed on the other end of the rope to lead into new questions for season 2. And now I think I have a better understanding of how to properly introduce them, because parts of it, for like episode 6, it kind of has a subtlety of a brick wall. Some of those things.
Was 6 wasn't the drunk episode, was it?
No, 6 was the
was that the Free State?
That's episode 5.
Okay.
Episode 6 is the walk where he goes on his walk.
I gotcha.
And
it's the discovery it's the physical discovery episode, really.
Yeah.
Okay.
But there's elements in there that I didn't properly I guess drop out there for people to get.
But did you get that by listening back? Or
yeah.
Okay. So you but I mean it was painful, but you did listen back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I did. I mean, there are 3 episodes I really re-listened to make sure, it's like, did I do this right? The rest of them I can't. The rest of them I just can't. But there were a couple where I'll re-listen to try and the words. But that particular aspect is one of the main things that I think I'm going to be bringing into season 2 when it comes to my writing, is how to properly introduce answers to questions instead of just having, the big dick of truth just hit it on the table and be like, take it, audience.
I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I mean, remember, this is storytelling, right? Like, you are the author, and no matter how many other characters there are, right? Like, you are the voice of God. So whatever setup we need, we're as an audience member, like, we're along for the ride, Does this go on forever? Like, I mean, obviously season 1, you're working on season 2. Is there a 4, 5, 6? Like, is there an overarching arc and you know where it ends?
I know exactly where it ends. It's a 3-season show.
Okay.
Only 3 seasons. When I came up with the original idea, I came up with the exact final line in my head.
And you wrote it down. Please tell me you wrote it down.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, all right.
I wrote down the final sentence, and then I circled the final word, which, no one's going to know, but it was literally, my name is Delsin Moore, and then the final word that someone would say is defiance. And then that's so I know exactly where the story goes. I want to bring into the next 2 seasons more flow.
I gotcha. And as you go, aside from flow, like the world gets bigger, right? Like,
yeah,
I love the idea because it's so. I don't want to say simple. Simple's the wrong word, but in a world where people start things that don't have an end, or they start things without knowing how they end it. Or maybe this will just go on forever. Like, knowing your start and your end, and, you know, this is what I'm going to split it up in. Like, that's huge. Because it, like, I don't want to speak ill of network television, but let's be fair. The reason some of these shows lose their way is because they have no idea where they're going.
Yeah, I wanted to avoid. Listen, I am a diehard Supernatural fan. All right, I'll just say it now. I have watched every single episode of all 15 seasons. But for me, personally, season 1 through 5. And I kind of have, like, it was season 3 of Supernatural that kind of like how I wanted to weave in the elements smoother. Like, I watched how they introduced elements from season 1 and season 2, and they did it with this like, it was almost effortless in the way they told the story. And I watched that and I was like, after I did, you know, season 1, I'm rewatching Supernatural because we're stuck in the house. I want to be able to better have those lines flow in the story and not, you know, again, brick wall, just thump.
What are the other creative influences? Like, I mean, is it just everything around you, or are there specific like pieces of art? Like, obviously Supernatural's television. So is television like huge? I mean, obviously we talked about the radio. I understand that, but like movies, television, like, are you taking little bits and pieces from everything?
Yes.
Okay.
Like Delsin, when I write him how I would do it, and how my, you know, and then I include, well, you know, like, how would my dad kind of say these things? But the idea of Delsin was kind of a little bit of Cool Hand Luke, just that loner, trapped. You know, he's a little, because he thinks he's smarter than the system, and he's kind of the last free man in that world of the story. And I kind of wanted to have a little bit of a Cool Hand Luke element with my guy, but not, you know, it's Paul Newman. You can't really top it. But yeah, there are elements like, again, episode 7 was a love story to The Last of Us. Yeah. I wanted that emotional, holy shit moment that game instilled in me. And episode 8, you know, the one where I tell my background story. There's an episode of Lost.
Okay.
I wanted, because there's a story where I think it was Jack's character or whatever, one of those characters, and it was just like end of his rope, you know, telling that what I guess defined him in those moments that led to where he is now. I wanted that kind of feel to it.
I mean, I applaud your variety, right? Because, like, I mean, I know creatives that are like, well, I get all my ideas from TV because that's what I want to do, or I get all my ideas from movies or what have you. And it's like, no, storytelling is storytelling is storytelling. Mm-hmm. And while voice may be the oldest, right? Like, we were telling stories like this well before we could write, but then we learned to write, and there were different things we could do, and then we could draw pictures, and there were different things we could do, and then there were moving pictures. Like, there's elements of good storytelling in everything. And I think that the best storytellers, and your season 1 is proof of this, get it from everywhere.
Oh yeah. Season 2, it's drawn from 3, like season 2 is going to have 4 big things. You're going to be able to see I hate to sound pretentious, but you're going to see the DNA of these 4 influences in the story. Like, because they're epic stories, they're huge stories. So and this particular, like, I wanted to start season 1, micro.
Yep.
Season 2, macro. And season 3, I want it to be a hybrid of both. You can see the story is told small, but you know of the huge implications of it.
Yeah.
So season 2 is going to have massive, like, just 4 main elements. That might be a detriment. Now that we're talking about it, I may need to rethink my...
Well, I mean, look,
approach.
you didn't publish season 2, episode 1 yet, so you have all the time in the world.
Oh, yeah. Okay. The more I'm thinking about it, now I'm overthinking it. Shit.
Well, but we do this. I do this too. Like it seems to come up on this show a lot recently, but like there are moments when I'm doing research or getting ready for a conversation where I go, I think I've done my homework well. I'm going to ask this question. This is going to be the answer, and I'm going to be able to cycle right into this question, and this will be the answer, and then we'll be able to go off topic a little bit. And it's like that's never going to like I forget those things halfway. Like I brew a pot of coffee before almost every episode, and halfway through brewing, I forget everything except the first question, right? Like everything that I just laid out is now gone. Why did I even bother? But hey, it happens, right? Like, and we go through these exercises, and every episode I've done before this, and every episode I've thought of before this, helps inform me to whatever I'm doing now. At least I like to think so. Like,
yeah,
it's always building, right? And yours is as an actual story, right? And in a more linear fashion is more concrete. Like we can see these are the developments, these are the plot threads.
Let me ask you a question. As someone who listened to the show, I kind of want your personal opinion on something.
Okay.
Flashbacks, like I did telling backstories.
Yep.
How do you feel about that in a story? Because for me, it was really hard not to go down the road where it was like, well, this is just an easy crutch to be able to tell difficult stories. And like as someone who consumes the media, how do you feel about backstories or background or flashback stories, as it were?
I like flashback stories, and I'll tell you why. Because flashback stories allow the storyteller, and I get this more from reading books than I do from anything else, but flashbacks allow you to IV drip out the information that the reader needs to know. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't need to know everything. Like, we don't start stories with, he was born on a cold night in October, and then he went to school. Like, we don't do that. We go, this is where he is right now, and it happens to be his birthday in October, right? Like, and I think piecemealing it allows us to not forget everything. Usually, when you're doing a backstory, it's related to the things that are going on. So I'm more likely to remember. Like, if you tell me, as is the case, right? Like, he cracks the code and gets to the laptop and all that stuff because he went to school for IT and communications, I'm more likely to remember that than if you just spend 3 paragraphs or a narrative at the very beginning saying he went to school for this, he had 2 kids, like. So as flashbacks work, I'm okay with it. I think it works better for the story overall, provided that it's not like, well, we have a backstory for every single thing, right? Like, there is a balance there, but it's much better than what I like to call the info drop, which is like, who are you? This is who I like. No, like, just like, what are you doing here? And then we'll figure out who you are later, right? Like, I like it because it breaks up the story, but I'm more likely to remember that shit. Like, if you tell me everything up at once, I'm not going to remember.
Okay. I just was curious about that from just from an audience point of view. I just kind of, I know it's your show and I'm just kind of hijacked.
No,
it's
all right.
I kind of wanted to know because you were asking about the writing process, and that is a part of a problem when I write is I kind of lean on that too much and turn the background stories into big info dumps.
But you already know that, so clearly you're already working on trying not to.
Oh, there are so many there's piles of printed out scripts in the closet where it's like episode 14 is going to tell the background story of the bricks, and it's going to be all their hopes and dreams and what they hope to accomplish as zombies and how do they feel during that moment. And then I'm like, oh, that's terrible. We're just going to get rid of that shit. But yeah, you were asking, I got to thinking about that while we were talking.
No. I look, I love process. I mean, obviously, that's kind of one of the, I love process and story. And you know what? You can't talk about process without talking about story. The two are 100% interchangeable. And that's one of the weird things that I didn't name this podcast Process and Story. Although I didn't know that's what it was going to be, right? Like I had no idea.
That is a great name for a podcast, though. That is a fantastic Process and Story.
It's my subtitle. I'm just going to subtitle because this is the thing, right? Like I always like to tell people, like, you want help with a podcast? Great. This is what you do. Title it what it's going to be and then pick something that it's going to be and stay in your lane. And I haven't done either of those things. But I think over the course of, if years from now when I get to like 400, right, I can go back and go, all right, yeah, no, it was Process and Story for that early stuff. But then, holy crap, I had a run of guests that didn't talk about any of that stuff. And hey, who knows?
Absolutely.
What's interesting to me is that while Joel and I have very similar inspirations and influences, and while we both enjoy each other's podcasts, we didn't want to create the same thing. Joel went with a fictional narrative, and I went with a conversational podcast. Most importantly, we were inspired to create something. And while it might not have been the first inspiration or second inspiration that got us to literally or figuratively put pen to paper, eventually we did. And when we did, we created something we wanted to consume that we are both proud of. But what resonates mostly is what Joel's father said to him. Don't waste your time. As I record this, I've been soul searching for the better part of 3 years. But not having found that one thing hasn't stopped me from creating something. This podcast, or continuing my blog, or even assisting friends with their own passion projects. While it is possible that I will eventually find what I'm looking for, I'm not expecting that it will be easy, and I'm not anticipating that it will just simply work. I know things that matter take effort. Things that matter require sacrifice. Things that matter take time. And above all, they aren't a waste. So, it can be as simple as just spending more time with friends and loved ones, or as complicated as becoming your own sound engineer for the next project you were inspired to create. Don't waste your time means making sure your time is valuable. It's a commodity that can't be saved, only spent, 1 minute at a time. So don't waste your time. Do what you have to do, but most importantly, don't forget to do what you want to do. Whatever that is. Thanks for listening to The Palmer Files, episode 40. As a reminder, all links are available in the show notes, and now for the official business. The Palmer Files releases every 2 weeks on Tuesdays. If you're still listening, I encourage you to join the discussion. You can tweet me at Agent Palmer, my guest Joel Mengel at FuelNeve, that's FuelNeve, his show at Edgeworldcast, and this show at The Palmer Files. You can find the Edge of the World broadcast, as well as Joel's other show, The Curly Mustache, wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget, you can see all of my writings and rantings on agentpalmer.com, and of course, email can be sent to thepalmerfiles@gmail.com. All right, Joel, do you have one final question for me?
I do, and we're gonna a little bit of a spoiler. That spoiler warning for those of you who haven't listened. Which, by the way, we are available on iTunes and Spotify. So, but season 1,
Yeah.
the big drop at the end, the holy crap moment that I was aiming for. Where do you think we're going?
Ooh, you know what? That's a good. I honestly, so I binged it today. You know, and I honestly don't know because my brain, and this is, I think, maybe a personal thing. My brain got so wrapped up in trying to figure out the new character, the new voice, that the very, very, very end was not what I focused on. Like when the credits run, I'm so focused on her and not the creepy voice at the end. Because I'm like, well, there's a lot more going on now. Because and I don't know, maybe it's the way you set it up, but you set it up like he was alone. So no matter what else happens, the fact that he's not alone, like, I can deal with any other shock you're going to give me. But for 8 episodes, I thought he was the last man standing, and now he's not alone. He's not alone, Joel. He's not alone. So for me, it's like, well, whatever they tackle together, but they're not alone. Like, oh, what?
Oh, wait, did you not hear the stinger?
No, I know the stinger. I know the stinger. I'm just saying
that part. Okay, I was like, he doesn't know about the fucking stinger.
No.
That's awesome.
No, I got the stinger, but for me, like, I freaked out so much more about, like, there is someone else because you set up such a desolation and the wearing down of Delsin, it's such a hopelessness that, like, when somebody else arrives who isn't a zombie and doesn't want to eat your face and is talking in English, right? It's such a mind blower that, like, it's the pincher move that wins the war, and you're like, but it's just the pincher move. What about the rest of my offensive, right? But for me, like, the pincher move did it. Like, I didn't need the rest of the offensive. I was just what? So yes, I know there's other things coming, but, like, for me, the bigger one was like, holy shit, he's not alone.
Okay, because I just kind of was like, I've always been curious, like, because me and my friends will do this about TV shows or movies or, you know, for me and my buddies, it's always the Magnus Archives where we were like, okay, that was a big ending. And then we kind of hypothesize where it's going. And I didn't know if, like, you had a little hypothesis.
No, I'm so, I think I need to listen to the last episode again, because again, look, this is where, when we talked about info dumps, that was a proper info dump, right? Because she's got all the intel and he's like, what? And it's like, I got so wrapped up in that. And maybe it's because of all the spy books that I've been reading. Like, it's just like I'm trying to read in between the lines of the intel, and I'm looking at intel and information as so much more important than the exterior things. And that's very much me. Like, do not take that as a takeaway. But, like, for me, in intelligence and information is so, like, the paramount. Like, it's easy. It's better to make information, or it's better to make decisions based on information than necessarily circumstances. And that's a thing that I feel like is all because of the espionage I read. So that's, yeah. But I'm excited for season 2.
That works for me. As I just like the fact that you took, you know, that it had that effect on you. Like that. I am not used to this much positive validation from something I've done outside of my immediate family. So to have someone and I'm not trying to kiss your ass, but I'm going to say it, someone as immensely talented as you are with your work and your podcast and your blog and everything, that, it's like, this motherfucker likes my stuff and he's getting what I was trying to put out there. And it just hearing you talk about that, I'm like, I'm on cloud 9 right now.
Well, but for me, right, you're the unpolished, like, you're the gem I found, right? Like, how does everybody not know about this, right? Like, I think that, like, I like to say everybody has a story, and everybody does, but not every story is created equal, and I feel like your story's good, like it's quality, and I think people need to listen to this.
Sorry, I am just not. I am visibly uncomfortable right now receiving this kind of praise.
Look, I hope I've just kind of, like, glossed over the fact that you called me a professional, because, like, for me, like, look, bar none, the worst thing you can do to me and for me is give me a gift or a compliment, because I don't take either very well, so I just gloss them over.
I understand. Trust me, I understand. I absolutely understand.
Well, we can start our support group on Monday.
Perfect. Thank you. It's hi, I'm Joel, and I don't take compliments. Hi, Joel.